Subscribe to this channel right now. What have I been telling you, ladies and gentlemen? I have been telling you that the Supreme Court has essentially overturned the conviction. It will be official very soon, before November 5th. Hit subscribe to this channel. Trump wins a new, quicker path to SCOTUS overturning his felony conviction. People are now talking about it. This is a Business Insider article, an excellent Business Insider article. Trump wins a new, quicker path to the Supreme Court of the United States overturning his felony conviction. We're going to talk about this a lot more throughout the live stream. He lost a federal bid to overturn the conviction, but the federal court sided with Democrats in Colorado. They upheld the Colorado ban. The federal courts upheld the special counsel nonsense, the indictments against Trump. It took the Supreme Court in a unanimous decision to overturn the Colorado ban, despite federal courts siding with Democrats. And to my super chat, thank you, Paul Bartlett. Thank you so very much. But the federal court just the other day denied Trump. That only expedites an appeal to the Supreme Court. They're going to look at it before November. And this is a pretty phenomenal, amazing, historic thing, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get to that in a second. Let's just listen to a little bit more about the debate, the aftermath. It only helped Trump in the long run, in my view. And here's why.
Vice President Kamala Harris set to rally voters in Pennsylvania today, while former President Trump out in Las Vegas.
Rich Edson is live at the White House. Hey, Rich.
Hey, good morning, Lawrence, Steve Ainsley, and Brian. Well, we're a couple of months away from Election Day. That means we're going to see rallies in swing states, and that's what we're seeing today. You've got Vice President Kamala Harris. She's in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania today. That, by the way, Luzerne County, which former President Trump won by more than 6 percentage points in 2020. It's also about 20 miles from Scranton, where President Biden was born. Trump has a rally in Nevada, in Las Vegas. Then this evening, following fundraising and an afternoon press conference in California, that is not a swing state. Yesterday in Arizona, Trump offered voters another tax exemption.
We will end all taxes on overtime. You know what that means? Think of that. That gives people more of an incentive to work. People who work overtime are among the hardest working citizens in our country. And for too long, no one in Washington has been looking out for them.
The Harris campaign calls the pitch desperate and claims Trump is saying whatever it takes to try to trick people into voting for him. The vice president was also pitching.
We had record low poverty and we had record highs in household median income. We have not reached, this is according to the Wall Street Journal, we have not reached the record highs in household median income that we experienced under Trump in 2019, okay? There is less wealth after 4 years of Biden and Harris. Less wealth per family in the U.S. than there was in 2019, despite corporate profits in the stock market.
Voters on the economy at her rally in North Carolina.
Some of the top economists in our country and in the world have reviewed these plans. Goldman Sachs, for example.
There's no economist in the world that thinks price controls, and very few economists think that taxing unrealized gains is a good idea. These are the antithesis of what an economist would view as sound policies. But of course, they always, Democrats, Harris in particular, always point to, well, we have smart people who agree with us. Like, well, okay. A lot of smart people also said to shut down economic activity 4 years ago. That was the worst thing we could have ever done.
Had said that my plan would grow our economy and his plan would shrink the economy, that his plan would reignite inflation.
Reignite the inflation that you created? How does that work?
And send us into a recession by the middle of next year.
we had a technical recession, 2 quarters of negative growth in 2022. We're heading towards, because of the 4 years of Harris and Biden, an actual recession. Yes, you wouldn't get a recession immediately if Trump won because of Trump's policies.
Though Goldman CEO David Solomon says a bigger deal has been made of that report than it should be. He said in an interview that the report shows the difference between the two sets of policy is about 0.2% in GDP growth. He also notes that these economic plans have to go through Congress, so predicting their effect is pretty difficult because good luck trying to figure out what comes out the other end of Congress. Back to you guys.
And Rich, it's next year that the Trump.
Also, I don't think Goldman Sachs talked about the consequences of Harris's price controls, okay? Or going after corporations for alleged price gouging, which she didn't do, or they didn't do, Biden, the past 4 years. But suddenly they're going to go after these corporations.
Era tax cuts are going to sunset unless the next Congress actually says, you know what, this was a good idea, let's do it again.
Exactly. This is like the sequel when the Bush tax cuts were expiring in the Obama administration. Negotiations, fiscal cliff, last minute, maybe a replay next year.
Stay tuned.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Well, there are a lot of reasons why you're going to go to the polls. And for most Americans, it's the economy, it's the prices, it's inflation. Number 2, we're finding it's immigration. But if you look at what's happened over the last 4 years under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, your gas prices have gone up almost 53%, energy up 42.4%, your shelter, like your rent or your mortgage, up 23.4%, food and groceries up almost 23%, and airline fares up almost 22%.
Soon we'll get a full screen of everything you just said.
We will. We just want to listen. But we do have full screens from you because we asked you, how have you been impacted by the inflation that has been runaway? Went way up, come down a little bit. An email from Gary. He says, I elected to not retire because prices for everything are so high. Groceries, electricity, fuel, housing, all up. Bidenomics is a disaster, and they know it is hurting everyone, but don't care. Remember last time we asked for examples, and there were a number of people who said that they had, remember the person said they retired, but they had to live in an RV because they couldn't afford a house.
Let's use a girl's voice for this one.
I've already talked a lot this morning. I think I need to share.
Okay. All
right,
Talk like Michelle would.
This is Michelle. I live on Social Security disability. When prices go up, my income does not, just like others. So I have gone from things being tight every month to having to go to local food banks and churches at the end of each month for food. I pray that Trump wins. Gosh,
Jacqueline,
that's heartbreaking.
Has a similar story. My husband, a former police officer, now works in a union shop to provide a better income. My father has a small business for 51 years, and after our business being a well-known local staple in the community, we almost closed our doors due to the last 4 years under Biden and Harris. And it's just a stark contrast because I remember going out there interviewing business owners, especially restaurants that were a part of a franchise, and they got a second location, and they thought that the Trump tax cuts, as well as, getting rid of those regulations, was going to continue. It didn't, and they end up closing those same franchises. So stark contrast.
And the inflation hits everybody, but the big question is, how will it impact new voters? People who might still live at home, or, a lot of their finances are dictated by their parents. And the reason I bring that up is because earlier this week, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris. 750,000 people apparently have gone to vote.gov. They had been doing just 30,000 a day. Now they are they're knocking on the door of 1 million people registered. So you wonder, how big an impact ultimately will Taylor Swift actually have? I'm not suggesting all those people are going to vote for her, but if 10% did, that's a big number.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a big number if 10% of those people, the majority of whom live in California or New York, or Washington, or Oregon. Furthermore, if you choose to vote for a candidate because Taylor Swift or a celebrity told you to do so, or told you they're going to vote for Harris, and you say, so you're okay with the inflation, high interest rates, directly the fault of Biden and Harris. There is no debate. Even the most staunch, rabid, apoplectic, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat will eventually have to admit in a good faith debate that inflation and high interest rates are the fault of the Biden administration. We didn't have the high interest rates. Interest rates were what? A fraction of a percent when Biden took over, and inflation was less than 2%. And then it skyrocketed to 9%. They went after oil and gas companies because that's part of the Democratic Party game plan. It's what they do. They think oil and gas corporations and the oil and gas industry is immoral. So they went after the oil and gas industry. Then inflation went up because fuel costs are directly correlated to inflation. So why would you, if you're on the far left, let's say you're a communist or a socialist, and you care about the quote-unquote working class, why would you vote Harris? Why? I don't get it. Literally, the working class did better under Trump. There's not even a debate. We had record low poverty with low inflation and low interest rates. We had record highs in household median income. The average household had more wealth, greater income, greater disposable income. Okay, and we still haven't reached that level of household median income. And that was in the Wall Street Journal the other day. I just don't get it. I don't get it. You think Trump is such an existential threat that you would vote for high inflation and high interest rates and a terrible economy just because you don't like his personality? And it's not like Democrats have done anything for the environment or foreign policy. Foreign policy is a catastrophe. They just care, like, we just had endless wars, which I knew would take place, that weren't there with Trump. Why weren't they there with Trump? Oh, that's right. Why didn't the regions of the world that are now embroiled in chaos, why weren't they embroiled in chaos with Trump? But anyway, it's just, I just don't get, this is the first generation, this is the first era of American politics, the first generation of Americans that would put their sensibilities above their pocketbook. I don't get it.
Right, but she got the younger vote anyway. I mean, the younger vote tends to go to Kamala Harris anyway, and she has most of her fans outside Dave Portnoy are younger. Mm-hmm. He's a Swiftie.
Well, and we talked about this last week. He did say that. Yeah.
But didn't he say he's voting for Trump?
Right. He says, I'm going to vote for Trump. He goes, you should not vote for who I vote for. I'm just telling you who I'm voting for.
Right, exactly.
He goes, celebrity should not tell you.
And last week we were talking about how Donald Trump has, for the most part, corralled the bro vote, which are men 18 to 29. The problem is the young people are hard to poll because they don't answer the phone. And so it's hard to figure out exactly.
They're always in the gym.
The young people are hard to poll, and Trump voters are hard to poll as well because they watch media on mainstream every day, literally demonize them every single day. And so when someone calls them, they don't want to pick up the phone to say who they're going to vote for. They don't want the pushback. So that's why he underperforms every single poll.
The question is, will the younger people actually go to the polls?
That's true.
Will they go and vote?
That's the great unknown. Let's stay tuned. I'm Steve Doocy.
So if you're a young person, you're complaining about not being able to own a home, and the interest rates for mortgage rates are double, literally double. I just don't get it. I don't understand. Like, I know that people, like, on the left, I was on the left my whole life, okay? I understand the mentality, but not in this day and age. The left gravitates towards things that used to be like Trump, Bush, Cheney, and Roosevelt Republican. So censorship, that used to be a Republican thing. Now it's a Democratic Party thing. Then they hide in the most disingenuous manner. They say, oh, it's terms and conditions and guidelines. It's like, yeah. The terms of service or conditions, or it always revolves around what is acceptable speech to a liberal or to a left-leaning person, So they say, well, conservative dialogue is unacceptable. Gee, that's interesting. And then they claim it's just guidelines and terms of service, and it's obviously curtailing free speech. Like, it's very difficult for a person on the left to understand. We were not able to talk about Hunter's laptop. If I used the word Hunter's laptop on this platform, it would have been a big problem 4 years ago. That is free speech. Free speech is being able to talk about a colossal story highly detrimental to Democrats. That's what would be free speech. You're always able to talk about what's detrimental to Trump, but what's detrimental to Democrats, oh my God. That's what's called free speech, being able to talk about both political sides.
And Strategist Chairman and CEO Jason Trennert. I've known you a very long time. So Kamala Harris, I'm going to change that. Ed said, good to see you, by the way. Edward said, could not say whether Americans are better off than they were when she and Biden took office. No, she would not, because she cannot say that, because they are worse off. And you've done some recent research on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've just looked at the thing that's important to remember about inflation is that it's cumulative, which means that even if the rate goes down, prices don't go down. So what we've done is we've looked at real wages on a cumulative basis, which is we've looked at people's wages versus the increase in prices. And what you found is that in the Trump years, people's standard of living improved. People got richer by about 3%. During the Biden years, they've gotten poorer. Prices have exceeded wages.
So prices and inflation exceeded wages. Well, prices have throughout his tenure, Biden. But you just look, I mean, current change in American standard of living, Trump versus Biden, first 44 months. I mean, it's right there. You had more money with Trump. You have less money with Biden and Harris. Why would you, I don't get it. It's like the old Harry Carey. I just don't get it. Remember Harry Carey? I love Harry Carey. I just don't get it. How can he lose a pop-up in the sun? But why would you vote to be poorer? You're literally voting to lose money. I don't understand why you would do just because Trump's personality. Because you care about the environment. Okay, the Democrats have done nothing for the environment. If anything, they've been begging oil and gas companies to produce more.
Wages by at least 4%, and based on another configuration of inflation that we use, by as much as 5%. So they cannot say that because people's standard of living has declined. Their dollars go a lot less far than they used to.
On the topic of are you better off or not, Eric Swalwell channeling the love he once had for Fang Fang into campaigning for Kamala Harris and her economic policy. Watch this.
Right. They're going to ask the fairest questions, the kindest questions. It's going to be sweet. It's going to be professional. You're always professional.
My question is a Harris presidency basically going to be Joe Biden's second term?
Yeah, well, we are definitely better off than we were 4 years ago, because 4 years ago we were in COVID. Donald Trump was telling us to ingest God knows what.
False. He was not telling you to ingest anything. We were in a situation where Democrats pushed to shut down economic activity. These are the same people who say that Trump lies all the time. Literally, both statements were categorical patent lies. Let's continue.
The economy was tanking. People were unemployed.
People were unemployed because Democratic governors shut down their states because bureaucrats and experts told them to do so.
Kamala Harris is going to put more money in pockets so you can find first-time homeowners in every neighborhood. And
people literally have less money in their pocket because of inflation, because of high interest rates, and because of energy policies. If you look at the Wall Street Journal stated that we haven't even reached the household median income we had in 2019.
In America.
Do you think she needs to explain every policy reversal that she's had in the past few weeks?
Kamala Harris is going to be driven by her values, which is the exact opposite of Donald Trump, who couldn't articulate his values at that debate. He looked scared. He's almost 80. He looked like he was 180. His shoulders were caving in. He wouldn't make eye contact with her. He doesn't have a plan.
His shoulders were not caving in. I believe he made eye contact. Why would that be an issue? If he made eye contact, they would say he was trying to intimidate her. If anybody adheres to their value system, it's Trump. He wants a wall. He's always wanted a wall. He wanted tariffs. He's always wanted tariffs as a short-term negotiating tactic. Trump has always been against never-ending war. It's Harris that wanted Medicare for all. Now she's against Medicare for all. She wanted to ban fracking. Harris now wants to allow fracking. I think she wanted to defund law enforcement. Now she claims she was against that. So it's the Democrat in this case it's all over the place.
He's not going to tell us what his plan is. He said he has a concept of a plan. That woman has a plan. She has a vision. She's on a mission.
I'm not going to comment on the.
But he's a very good Democrat, Swalwell. You could see he was like calm, smooth. He looked good, and he was just able to, spout, lie after lie. But he looked very good doing it. They say Trump lies. Oh my God, nobody lies more than Democrats about major issues. Trump engages in hyperbolic speech. He'll say, like, my economy was the best ever. And then Democrats, oh, it's a lie. It's like, no. His economy was extremely good. One of the best economies ever, if not the best in some respects.
The Don Johnson look
on
Congress.
Him.
Yes.
Good.
However, listen, I appreciate what he's saying in the sense that he thinks that we're better off than we were under 4 years of Donald Trump. And I think that's refreshing, right? The fact that they think we're better off and that Kamala's not going to change course.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you come to that conclusion. I just talked about economically, it would be impossible to prove given the data that we have. I just wonder when I watch these debates whether David Muir or any of these people like take the subway or go grocery shopping or just, they're telling you not to believe what you're seeing with your own eyes. And my office is directly across from the Roosevelt Hotel, okay, which is home to 3,000 newcomers, okay? And it's impossible to see the sympathy for either these poor people that are coming over or the taxpayer or the local businessman. So I don't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry, I'm going off the topic of economics, which is my bailiwick, but I run around this town. I've lived in New York City for 34 years. There is no question that the quality of life in this town has deteriorated and has deteriorated directly because of the policies of the Biden-Harris administration. Open borders, runaway spending, higher inflation. It's just a worse place to live. And I would say that's true in many towns across the United States.
And I want to move on to this.
But Trump is mean. And Trump is an existential threat, haven't you heard? So, and he's bad for democracy. And, he emboldens the bad people, and he was dining with bad people. And so, therefore, we must endure high inflation and high interest rates. Don't you know? That's why we can't have good things as a nation. We have to just endure high interest rates, high inflation, zero border, terrible foreign policy, endless wars. Why? Because Trump is mean.
But Harris and Biden have added to the debt almost $8 trillion. We came in today $1.9 trillion.
Forget the $8 trillion they spent with the inflation that keeps going up, the Inflation Increasing Act. Trump is mean. He's a mean. Trump is, what's the song? He's a mean one. Trump. He's mean. Trump is mean. Therefore, we must endure everything bad.
In deficit spending in the 11 months of this fiscal year, and what in the hell have we gotten for it? Real quick before.
Yeah, listen, we're running budget deficits right now that are about 7% of GDP. We have never done that when we weren't at war or weren't in recession. We've actually never done that when the unemployment rate was below 7. So we're spending money. No wonder we didn't have a recession last year. We've been spending money as if we were in a recession. And God forbid that were ever to happen, the deficit would blow out further because you would be spending on the stabilizers like unemployment insurance and food stamps and all the other things. So
then they would try to ask the Fed for monetary stimulus, and then they would say the Fed needs to cut interest rates and buy up government bonds, add monetary stimulus into the economy, and then the inflation would go skyrocket. We don't have an ability now to combat a devastating market crash. The stock market collapse is on the horizon. Okay, it'll likely happen before November, and it's the fault of Biden-Harris's policies.
This is extraordinarily irresponsible. At some point, the bill will come due in the form of higher interest rates and, in my opinion, another wave of inflation.
Right, malaise. The people have felt it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's go to this because for the first time in a decade, the cost of rent and utilities, it rose faster than home values from 2011 to 2019. Real rent rose less than 3% every year. Contrast that with 2020 to 2023, which is the Biden-Kamala years, rent rising 3.8%. And nearly half of America's 42.5 million renters spent more than 30% of their income on housing. And to the Census Bureau, that makes them cost burdened. And that burden's falling on minorities the hardest. 56% of black households that rent were cost burdened, along with 53% of Hispanic households were also cost burdened. And so, Jason, I think this goes to the point, why are Democrats losing black and Hispanic voters? Well, right here, over 30% of their incomes are just going to rent and utilities. They can't afford this economy.
Oh, I agree. And I think, again, you have to bring in unrestricted immigration and open borders, right? You've let in another 20 million people. So you've increased the demand for housing by 20 million people. It's not surprising that the price of housing is going up, right? So it's not only necessarily people that are buying homes yet. That will happen eventually.
Notice how Democrats never own their policies. We don't have an actual functioning border. They don't care. If you told the average Democrat or liberal or progressive, hey, 50 million people will enter the country, they don't care. They say, hey, the more the merrier, better. It's moral, it's just. They don't see it as a problem. Don't you get it? You know, I was thinking about this the other day. How could they not understand that Harris and Biden's policies are ruining the country? They don't see it as a problem. Except when you bus people to Martha's Vineyard, then it's like, oh my God, you're trafficking these individuals. Oh my God. And then the people at Martha's Vineyard give them Cocoa Puffs and cereal, like the good liberals they are. And then they say, well, you better go now. But they don't care. They don't see any negative to it. So if you ask like a progressive, socialist, Democrat, communist, liberal, if you said, look, tomorrow, 50 million to 100 million more people will come. Hey, you know what? It's fine. No problem. They don't see it as an actual problem. They don't see it as a national security dilemma. They don't see it as a social dilemma. They see it as immoral if you oppose it. They think it's moral, even though it's immoral in every respect, even for the people coming in. Making that journey is a very treacherous journey. The number of people who've lost their lives is more than at any point in Trump's administration. And of course, AOC doesn't care. So Democrats hide behind morality when it suits them, and they jettison those values when it suits them. They don't really care at all about a specific, guiding principle. There are no pictures of AOC looking into a chain-linked fence when you have greater atrocities taking place at that region than at any point with Trump, especially people of all ages. So much so we can't get into it, but let's continue.
They'll start to, unless President Trump is elected. But it's not surprising. It's hurting the communities that the Democrats supposedly are supposed to champion. These policies are directly hurting them. The spending, going back to what Dagan was saying before, you combine open borders along with runaway deficit spending. Deficit is always a tax, most on the poor. Wealthy people can hedge it. You can buy financial assets. You can investment banks will sell you all sorts of things to hedge your inflation exposure. The average person gets it right between the eyes in terms of inflation, and they feel it most especially. And I think it's being reflected in the polls that we're seeing, which is to say that I think Trump is going to win this thing going away, and Biden, I think Kamala has to be up 3 or 4 points in the national polls to win, and we are not seeing that right now.
And just really quickly before you go, it's something I talk about all the time, and it's what you can't see when the government borrows so much money and runs such giant deficits, particularly in peacetime. You are borrowing something and taking something away for the moronic pursuits of those in government, and you are depriving the private sector from money to be spent on smart endeavors and innovation. Yep. And ultimately, that is the downward spiral of a nation.
Amen. Right now, we're even so it's crowding, a term from the 70s, crowding out, which is to say the government has such a big position at the trough that it crowds out other people that want to borrow. Right now, we're spending more on our interest expense than we are on defense. We're going to be spending more on interest expense than we are on Medicare next year. So it's also going to crowd out, even if you're a big government spender, it's going to crowd out other government spending. To say nothing of the private sector, which has to compete and borrow at decent rates to make it worth their while. And in my opinion, higher long-term interest rates are very likely if we don't change our ways on spending.
So they say, well, the economy is growing. We're at 7% GDP in terms of our deficit. It's 7% of GDP. So it's government spending money. It's not the economy roaring. Let's continue.
Well, Donald Trump's closing statement at the presidential debate has struck a chord with TikTokers all over the world. The video posted by ABC News official TikTok received over 1 million likes and a staggering 17 million views. And that number continues to climb. Trump's remarks is a question that voters will likely be thinking about before they cast their ballot. Watch.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country.
Really quick, then you had a German politician say, oh, this is wrong. Trump is lying. It's wrong. Go and look. It's all over the past year and a half, 2 years. They're going back to coal. Germany is investing more in coal now because their foray into renewables didn't work in the way they wanted.
For the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it?
Charles, that's what's known as nailing the dismount.
Yeah, well, because she's Vice President Harris is trying, and with the help of the media, of course, and everyone else, all the image-making folks out there, to sort of act like she wasn't in the White House. I feel like the Democrats, she's running against two Democratic legacies here. The current one, and the one in the past, the one that's that started the Ku Klux Klan, the one that was against black population, and because he keeps saying we're not going to go back to the past. I hope we don't, especially when Democrats had the upper hand. But how she separates or tries to separate herself from what she could be doing right now. This administration cut holes in the border wall. They weren't building border wall. They cut holes in it. We know. Everyone knows what they did. We know what she believes in. And I think that's the most scary part. I was so happy former President Trump brought up Germany. I want to do a special on that probably in the next week or so. I don't think the American public understands the road we're on has already been paved. Germany just had a historic election. They just elected from the right for the first time since 1945 as they emerged from Nazi Germany, and they needed to rechange everything because they went down the wrong path. We don't need to go down there because they've destroyed the greatest industrial nation in Europe. They've destroyed it.
Kayleigh, talk to me about the impact of these numbers. So we've got 17 million likes on a platform that the Democrat Party and the campaign for Kamala Harris has been trying to widely utilize and harness. Is it simply that the fact speaks for itself and the question can be heard around the world?
It went viral because Donald Trump hit a key truth. And the key truth is this: Kamala Harris is the establishment. Kamala Harris is the ultimate DC insider. Kamala Harris is the swamp. The polling is extraordinarily clear, New York Times, Siena, that more than 60% want a major change from Biden. Only a quarter think Kamala Harris represents that.
Did Harris win a primary? I don't get it. I don't understand. If you're a Democrat and you think Trump is an existential threat, ask yourself about the Democratic Party primary in 2016 with Bernie Sanders, in 2024 with Biden. Biden got railroaded and cheated even more than Bernie Sanders. Okay? I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. And the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. It's embarrassing for me and for Bernie Sanders supporters who still exist today. I don't know why they would exist, but apparently they do. It's embarrassing for everybody. The problem, however, is that with Bernie Sanders, he exists simply to funnel left-leaning votes back into a Democratic Party that doesn't give a you-know-what about Medicare for all, Green New Deal, abolishing the filibuster, packing the courts, banning fracking. None of these things they believe. They just lie. I mean, Democrats hyperventilate about Trump. Trump engages in hyperbole. He doesn't lie the way Democrats lie. Democrats lie about their primary. They lie about banning fracking, Green New Deal. They don't want any of these things. They don't even really want a primary. And we saw that. But did Harris win a primary? How did she become nominee? How did Clinton become nominee? How is the nominee process held? How do they choose their nominee? They don't even believe in meritocracy. They simply are so arrogant. The hubris is unbelievable. Harris is nominee and facing Trump because they ousted Biden because he couldn't communicate. Biden won his primary. Then, in the most deceitful, sinister manner, they said, this was very patriotic of Biden. You forced him out. You're talking about the most despicable people forcing Biden out after he won his primary. These are the same people who say he's also the most famous, the most popular candidate of all time 4 years ago. Okay. Well, we still can't really talk about that. Trump wins a new, quicker path to SCOTUS overturning his felony conviction. It's in the Business Insider today, people. It's huge. When I give you the headline, Supreme Court overturning Trump's felony conviction, definitely hit the notification bell on the live stream. I don't know if people do that, but ladies and gentlemen, please do that. God bless you all, people. I will see you tomorrow. Hit subscribe. Listen, starting the middle of October, November, December, January, every day, 3 times a day, live stream and uploads. Hit subscribe, people. God bless you. Paul, thank you. And everybody here to my super chat, thank you. John, thank you again, as always.